The vice president slammed the folder on the table and said, "You're not worth this money anymore." $30 million hung in the air. And I already knew how to flip the game. The glass conference room went silent. Mark stood over me, one hand pressed on the red binder he'd just thrown down. Behind the glass, board members whispered like tourists at an exhibit. HR had already placed a cardboard box by the door, a signal as clear as any speech. "Effective immediately," Mark said. "You're done here." I looked at the binder. The tab sticking out was mine, my $30 million proposal. They were firing the person who built the only deal keeping this company alive. "Do I get a last meal?" I asked, "or did you cut that from the budget too?" "Sign this," he snapped, sliding a sheet forward. "Voluntary resignation." I smirked. "Voluntary? That's what you're going with. Either sign, or you lose every pending bonus," he said. I pushed the paper back. "I spent 3 years building what you're about to burn. You're firing the wrong person." HR forced a polite smile. "We wish you the best, Emily." "Save it for the quarterly call," I said. Chairs creaked as people shifted, pretending not to listen. Mark leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Sign and walk out quietly. I'll make sure your references stay clean." I laughed. "You want quiet? Then maybe learn what's in that binder before you wave it around." For a second, he froze. He didn't even recognize what he'd just thrown at me. That was all I needed to see. I stood, slid the binder back toward him, and gathered my things. No scene, no begging. Just a cold exit through rows of desks where no one met my eyes. My badge already blinked red when I tried the elevator. Efficient, but sloppy. Outside, city noise hit like a reset. I set the box on the curb, pulled out my phone, and checked the calendar. The 5 p.m. milestone for the deal was still there. 30 million wasn't gone. It was leverage. A message buzzed. "Heard about your departure. Coffee? Daniel. Lawyer. Smart enough to know where the cracks were." I typed back, 30 minutes. Bring your brain. At the cafe, I opened my notebook and wrote one line. He fired me. He fired the asset. Under it, 3 steps. Recover the originals. Verify the clause. Make them choose, public disaster or private payout. When Daniel walked in, briefcase in hand, he asked, "Rough day?" I closed the notebook. "Best one yet. Ready to make it expensive?" I carried the box through the open office like a criminal on display. Monitors glowed, keyboards clattered, but everyone was listening. Nobody met my eyes. Some scrolled harder on their screens, pretending I wasn't there. 3 years of late nights, canceled weekends, patching holes others created, and this was my send-off. A cardboard box, averted stares, and the echo of Mark's smug voice still in my ears. Ravi stood up halfway, then sat back down. Coward. He used to call me the engine of this place. Today, he couldn't even nod. I passed the glass meeting rooms. Inside, managers were rehearsing lines for the next board update. My name would vanish from the slides by tonight. At my desk, I packed the last pieces: mug, notebook, 2 pens I always kept capped. The plant Jenna watered every Friday. She appeared beside me, pale and shaky. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't stop folding cables." "Don't apologize for surviving." Her eyes darted toward Mark's office, blinds half closed. "He's saying you mishandled the numbers." "Of course he is," I said. "Blame works best when the target isn't in the room." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "I heard something last week. About the contract. IT said the reporting tools don't match the finance numbers. I don't know what it means, but that was enough. A loose thread. The kind of slip that ruins suits like Mark." "Thank you," I said. "Not pity. Gratitude." She nodded quickly and disappeared before someone saw her talking to me. I shoved the last notebook into the box. The badge clipped to it was already dead weight, access cut, identity erased. But the documents in my head, the clauses Mark never read, those still belong to me. I walked the last stretch to the elevator. Phones lifted as if people were checking time, but every glance was a verdict. I pressed the button. The mirrored doors reflected someone I barely recognized, steady eyes, tighter jaw, no trace of defeat. When the doors closed, the floor felt like it shifted under me. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I was leaving with motive. Outside, the air smelled sharper, real. I didn't head straight home. Not yet. I had to see the place from the outside, glass walls rising above traffic, the tower where I had been erased in under 15 minutes. I stood there a moment, watching. $30 million still floated inside those walls, tied to my name whether they liked it or not. And I had just been handed the cleanest excuse to pull it out from under them. My phone buzzed again. Daniel, running late. 10 minutes. Fine. 10 minutes to remember every smile that turned away, every silence that followed me down that hallway. 10 minutes to sharpen the anger into a tool. When the ride finally pulled up, I got in and didn't look back. The tower shrank in the rear view. But the deal, the money, the leverage, the proof, wasn't behind me. It was still mine. Daniel arrived at the cafe, loosened his tie, and dropped his briefcase on the table. You look calm for someone just thrown off a cliff. I built the cliff, I said. Now I'm selling tickets. He smirked, but his eyes narrowed at the red binder tab sticking out of my notes. That's the contract, isn't it? Not the contract, I corrected. My version. The one before Mark's edits. You remember what I told you about Clause 14? Daniel tapped the table. The ownership trigger. Exactly. Fire me, and it reverts to the original author. Me. He whistled under his breath. That's not a clause. That's a live grenade. Which he just pulled the pin on, I said. Daniel leaned closer. Do you still have the original files? On the company drive, locked down. I flipped open my notebook. But I know IT. They log everything, even what Mark wanted buried. Someone already whispered about mismatched numbers. That could be your leverage, Daniel said. If the reports don't line up, regulators won't care who's in charge, they'll care who has proof. I drained the coffee, cold now, and stood. Then we don't wait. Tonight, I go back in. Daniel frowned. Your badge is dead. Badges get cut. But I know the gaps. The cleaning crew badge works until midnight. And I know which exit still glitches when you press twice. He raised his eyebrows. You sound like you've planned this before. 3 years in that building, I said. I know its blind spots better than my own apartment. We walked out into the night air. The city was loud, restless, alive. Daniel checked his watch. If you're serious, we need more than a look around. We need evidence that would survive in court. Then bring a drive, I said. I'll bring the map. As he left, I stood at the corner, watching traffic. Mark thought firing me erased me. What he didn't understand was that the moment my badge went red, every secret in that building became a weapon. And I had nothing left to lose by using them. By midnight, the tower looked different. The glossy lobby lights were dimmed, the reception desk empty. From the sidewalk, the glass walls glared like a fishbowl with no fish. I waited until the cleaning crew swiped in. Same team every Tuesday, gray uniforms, tired eyes. I slipped in behind them, a clipboard in my hands like I belonged. No one questioned it. No one ever does when you look like you're supposed to be there. The elevator was slow, humming like a giant server. My heart matched its rhythm. 15th floor, my old floor, still smelled faintly of toner and burnt coffee. Rows of cubicles stood like tombstones. I headed straight to the server nook. Not the main room, too many cameras. The small corner where IT parked backup drives when they were in transit. I'd passed it 100 times unnoticed. The door clicked open with a cleaning batch. Just like I remembered. Inside, a low hum filled the dark. Racks of black boxes blinked with tiny green lights, as if watching me. I pulled my phone, snapped quick photos of the labeled drives. Finance. Contracts. Audit. Then I spotted it, an external dock still mounted, a drive half swallowed in its slot. Someone left it mid-process. Sloppy. Perfect. I slid the drive out, attached Daniel's encrypted stick, and began copying. The bar on the screen crawled forward, each percent a countdown. Behind me, footsteps. I froze. Listened. Cleaning cartwheels squeaked, then rolled away. My breath returned, sharp and fast. Copy complete. I yanked the drive, slotted it back exactly where it had been. Not a hair out of place. Before leaving, I glanced at the audit folder names on the screen. One caught my eye, Q3_override_Mark. My pulse spiked. Mark's personal override file, sitting in plain view. He really believed no one looked here. I didn't open it. Not yet. Better to let Daniel pull it apart safely. But I memorized the name. That file was my smoking gun. I slipped out the same way I came, blending with the cleaning crew as they left. The night air outside was thick, humid, real. I clutched the encrypted drive in my pocket like a loaded weapon. Mark thought he ended me today. What he actually did was hand me the fuse. Daniel's apartment looked more like a war room than a home. Legal pads stacked high, 2 monitors glowing with spreadsheets, coffee cups lined like evidence. I dropped the encrypted drive on his desk. Tell me you got something good, he said, plugging it in. Better, I said. I got sloppy. He frowned until the folders popped up on his screen. Finance. Contracts. Audit. Daniel leaned forward. Override. Exactly what it sounds like. He opened the file. A cascade of documents filled the monitor, adjusted numbers, hidden transfers, lines marked as temporary holds. At the bottom, Mark's digital signature. Daniel exhaled, low and sharp. Jesus, Emily. This isn't sloppy. This is fraud. I leaned over his shoulder. The numbers told the story clearly. Money shifted off books, expenses hidden under consulting, a neat $2 million rerouted days before my termination. Now you know why I wasn't allowed to survive this quarter, I said. He clicked deeper, scanning metadata. These edits are timestamped. And look, he didn't even wipe the logs. IT system shows exactly who accessed them. Mark's ID, straight across. I almost laughed. The man fired me with a straight face while leaving his fingerprints on every stolen dollar. Daniel rubbed his temples. We're not talking about leverage anymore. We're talking indictment. I picked up one of his pens and tapped it against the desk. Leverage first. Indictment later. If we go straight to regulators, the board cuts him loose and walks away clean. I want them dirty when this drops. Daniel gave me a look. That means timing. Timing is all I have left, I said. On the screen, the override file glowed like a flare in the dark. Mark thought he had buried me under paperwork. Instead, he'd buried himself under signatures. I sat back, folding my arms. Tomorrow, we let them think I'm gone. Then we remind them exactly how much I'm worth. Morning sunlight cut through the blinds in Daniel's apartment, turning his desk into a battlefield of coffee stains and printouts. The override file sat open on both screens like a live grenade. Daniel rubbed his eyes. So, what's the plan? Regulators? Press? Direct threat? None of the above, I said. We don't fire yet. We let them sweat. He looked at me like I'd grown another head. Emily, you have evidence that could bury Mark. Why wait? Because I want the board in the hole with him, I said. If I go public now, they'll drop him like a bad stock and pretend they never knew. I want their fingerprints too. Daniel leaned back. That means bait. Exactly. I pulled out my notebook. We plant the seed. Leak just enough to make them scramble. We drafted an anonymous message. Short, surgical. Audit logs show irregularities in Q3 financials. Review before regulators do. Attached, a blurred screenshot of Mark's override file, just enough to look credible, not enough to prove anything. Send it to? Daniel asked. Board secretary, I said. The one who can't keep secrets longer than a coffee break. He smirked. You're cruel. No, I said. I'm efficient. We hit send. The email vanished into the ether, but I could already imagine the panic echoing through glass offices. They'd start pulling files, asking questions, turning on each other. And when they did, every move would leave a trail. Daniel poured more coffee. You realize this makes you the prime suspect if they trace it. I shrugged. They already think I'm gone. Ghosts don't send emails. He stared at me, then shook his head with a grin. You're enjoying this. Not enjoying, I said. Focused. There's a difference. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text, meet me. Parking garage. Noon. Daniel leaned over. Who? I showed him. The number ended with the company's internal code. Someone inside. Someone nervous. Looks like the cracks are already forming, I said, grabbing my jacket. Time to listen to the first one who breaks. The parking garage was half empty, echoing with the hum of fluorescent lights and the drip of leaking pipes. I parked 2 levels down and walked slow, listening for footsteps. A man stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Hoodie, baseball cap pulled low. I recognized him anyway. Ethan, mid-level in finance. Always quiet in meetings, always typing too fast. You shouldn't be here, he muttered. Neither should you, I said. He glanced around, shoved his hands into his pockets. I don't have long. They're already checking logins. Then talk fast. Ethan handed me a folded sheet, crumpled like he'd been holding it all morning. I unfolded it under the flickering light. Numbers. Transfer lines. Hidden accounts. The same handwriting I'd seen on Mark's notes. This is from the Q3 reconciliation, Ethan whispered. I was told to bury it. Redo the reports, make the money vanish into consulting. And you did. His jaw clenched. I like my job. But after your firing, I know how this ends. They'll throw me under the bus next. I folded the sheet and slid it into my notebook. Why give this to me? Because you're the only one crazy enough to fight back, he said. We both froze at the sound of an engine. Headlights swept the ramp above us. A black company SUV rolled past, slowed, then continued down to the next level. Ethan backed up. "I can't be seen," he said quickly. "But listen, Mark isn't working alone. 2 board members signed off on the transfers. If you go after him, go after them too." "Names," I said. He swallowed. "Collins and Mercer." The SUV braked 1 level down. Doors slammed. Heavy footsteps echoed. Ethan pulled his hood tighter. I was never here. He vanished into the stairwell, leaving me with the sheet burning in my hand. I tucked it deep into my jacket and walked out slow, steady, like I belonged. The footsteps faded. My car was waiting 2 rows over. As I slid into the driver's seat, I looked at the crumpled sheet again. 2 more names. 2 more targets. Mark wasn't a lone wolf, he was cover fire. Which meant the real money trail wasn't $2 million. It was much bigger. Daniel spread the crumpled sheet across his desk, smoothing it flat with both hands. His eyes darted over the columns, lips moving without sound. "This isn't 2 million, he said finally. "It's at least 20. I leaned over. "Walk me through it." He tapped the first line. "Consulting 1, 8 million. We saw that already. But look here, 3 transfers split over different subsidiaries. Each routed through shell vendors. Total? 17.4. I whistled low. "Hidden in plain sight." "Exactly," he said. "And here, these initials. CM. That's Collins and Mercer. Board-level authorization." I sat back in the chair, the weight of it pressing in. So Mark fires me, buries the contract, and they all pocket 20 million while blaming me for delays. Daniel nodded grimly. Classic scapegoat play. But sloppy. Too many hands touched the file. I tapped the sheet. "We can't drop this yet. Not until they've doubled down. Not until there's no way out for them." He raised an eyebrow. "You want them deeper in the trap?" "Yes," I said. "If I go public now, Collins and Mercer can spin it. Call it an oversight. Fire Mark as the fall guy. Case closed. I want them tied so tightly they can't cut free." Daniel hesitated. "That means baiting them into action." "Exactly," I said. "We make them think the deal is collapsing without me. Force them to scramble and cover up more. Every scramble leaves fingerprints." He ran a hand through his hair. "Emily, this is dangerous. They're already paranoid. If they smell you moving." "They won't," I said flatly. "They think I'm out of the game. But here's the thing," I tapped the sheet again, "I am the game." Daniel stared at me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. What's step 1? I closed my notebook with a snap. "Step 1, remind them I exist without showing my face." The board thought I was gone. No access, no voice, no leverage. Perfect. That's when ghosts do their best work. I logged into a public terminal at a library across town, slipped Daniel's secure drive into the port, and opened the files we'd pulled. My fingerprints wouldn't touch this. The target wasn't the regulators, not yet. It was the client side of the $30 million deal, the partner company waiting for signatures. They needed confidence. And confidence dies fast when the numbers don't add up. I drafted a single message, short and brutal. Urgent. Projected financials for Q3 show inconsistencies. Attached, discrepancy sheet. Verify immediately. No name. No signature. Just the truth, wrapped in anonymity. I attached the blurred section Ethan had handed me, the one with Collins' initials, beside the transfer. Daniel glanced over my shoulder. "Once you send this, they'll panic. You ready for that?" I hit send. "They'll panic at each other, not me." By noon, I knew it had landed. Mark's calendar, still visible on the public meeting board, suddenly filled with emergency calls. Collins scheduled a closed session. Mercer blocked out his entire afternoon. Jenna texted me from her personal phone. "The office is on fire. Finance won't stop running back and forth." "Did you do something?" I smiled at the screen. "No. I'm already gone, remember." At 3 p.m., news leaked to me through Ethan. The client demanded clarification within 48 hours. Collins was furious. Mercer blamed Mark. Mark barked at IT. Perfect chaos. Daniel leaned back in his chair when I told him. "You realize you've just put them against the wall." "Good," I said. "People under pressure make mistakes. And every mistake is another thread in the rope tightening around their necks." By evening, the tower windows glowed like a furnace. I watched from across the street, unseen, as shadows of board members moved frantically inside. My ghost message had done its job. They thought they fired me. What they didn't realize was that I had just become the phantom holding their empire hostage. The email arrived at dawn. No subject line, just a single sentence. Conference room B, tonight. No lawyers. No signature, but I didn't need one. Only the board would dare summon me after firing me. They wanted control back. They wanted me scared. Daniel read it twice, jaw tight. This is a trap. Of course it is, I said. That's why I'm going. He slammed his pen on the desk. Emily, you walk into that room. They'll corner you. Threats, intimidation, maybe worse. I leaned back in my chair. Then I let them talk. The more they talk, the more rope they give me. By 7 p.m., I was back in the building. No badge needed this time. A board assistant met me in the lobby, pale and stiff, and led me upstairs. The elevator ride felt longer than it ever had when I worked here. Conference room B was smaller than the glass theater where they fired me. No windows. Just a table, too many chairs, and a stale pot of coffee sweating in the corner. Collins sat at the head. Mercer leaned back, arms crossed. Mark stood by the door, fake smile plastered on. Emily, Collins began, voice syrupy. We wanted to clear the air. I set my notebook on the table. Air looks pretty foggy from where I'm standing. Mercer cut in. You're circulating false documents. Damaging this company's reputation could make you liable for millions. I didn't blink. False? Interesting choice of word. You might want to check your audit trail before you say that out loud again. Mark's smile faltered. Collins shot him a look, then leaned forward. Listen. We can settle this quietly. A financial package, a confidentiality agreement, and you move on. Or, I asked. Or you'll be buried under litigation for the rest of your life, Mercer said flatly. The room went quiet. Even Mark avoided my eyes. I clicked my pen and wrote one line on the paper in front of me, slow enough for them all to watch. Q3_override_Mark. Collins froze. Mercer's jaw twitched. Mark's face drained. I closed the notebook. I don't want your hush money. I want your panic. And judging by your faces, I already have it. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Collins exhaled and forced a smile. We'll be in touch. I stood, walked to the door, and left without another word. In the hallway, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. They're moving funds again. Bigger this time. I smiled to myself. The board hadn't buried me. They'd just handed me the shovel. By the next morning, Ethan's warning was reality. Transactions lit up across Daniel's screen. Wire transfers, account shuffles, sudden consulting, expenses exploding like fireworks in the logs. They're cleaning house, Daniel muttered, scrolling fast. Shifting everything offshore before you can land a hit. Good, I said. The messier they move, the easier it is to follow. We watched the numbers dance. $3 million rerouted to a shell in Dubai. Another $5 million marked for strategic marketing in Singapore. And then the big one, $12 million pushed through 3 accounts in under an hour. Daniel rubbed his forehead. This isn't damage control. This is desperation. Exactly, I said. And desperation leaves fingerprints. I pulled out my notebook, adding each transfer with timestamps. By the end of the hour, I had 2 pages of raw panic mapped out in ink. Ethan texted again. Collins is losing it. He screamed at finance for leaving gaps. Mercer is demanding private calls only. Daniel looked at me. They're going to figure out someone inside is feeding you. Then we protect Ethan by moving faster, I said. We don't need him forever. Just long enough to close the net. We packaged the data into a timeline. Every move traced, every transfer marked. Daniel encrypted it and backed it up twice. This is enough to go to regulators right now, he said. I shook my head. Not yet. They still think I can be bought or silenced. Let them try again. Every attempt adds another nail to their coffin. He hesitated. Emily, you're playing with fire. I'm not playing, I said. I'm building the matchbook. That evening, the board issued an internal memo leaked to me within minutes. It accused external interference of destabilizing operations. Their paranoia was now official. Daniel handed me a glass of water like it was whiskey. They're circling the wagons. Let them, I said, folding the memo. Circles make easy targets. The summons came through Jenna this time, slipped in a text. They want you again. Private floor. Tonight. Daniel scowled when he read it. You realize they're done negotiating. This time it's teeth. Good, I said. Teeth make noise when they break. The private floor was nothing like the glass conference rooms. No windows, no press of employees. Just dark carpet, soundproof walls, and the smell of leather chairs. Collins, Mercer, and Mark waited at a round table. No assistants. No coffee. Just tension. Emily, Collins began, voice flat. You've gone too far. I pulled out my notebook, calm. Funny. I was thinking the same about you. Mercer leaned forward, eyes cold. You're interfering with corporate assets. That's criminal. We can bury you in lawsuits until you choke on legal fees. I clicked my pen, wrote a line on the page, $12 million Singapore. Then turned it toward him. How's that for criminal? Mercer's face twitched. Collins shifted in his chair. Mark tried to speak, but I cut him off. Save it, Mark. I've got your override file printed and sitting in a safe. One phone call and regulators own your inbox by morning. Collins' voice hardened. You leak that, you won't see a cent. You'll be radioactive. No firm will touch you. I smiled. You still don't get it. I don't need firms. I am the asset. Without me, this deal rots. Silence. Thick enough to choke on. Then Collins tried a new angle. What do you want? I closed my notebook. Not hush money. Not titles. I want you cornered. And I want you there when it happens. I stood before they could respond. Mark half rose, then sank back when Mercer shot him a look. As I walked out, Daniel's phone buzzed in my pocket. Ethan again. Collins moved another $8 million. Panic mode. Perfect. Every threat they threw only made them move faster. And every move tied them tighter to the noose. The next morning, Ethan's messages came slower, shorter. Finally, one buzzed in. They know. Collins ordered an internal sweep. Phones, emails, logins. Everyone's a suspect. Daniel read it over my shoulder. They're turning the office into a prison. Good, I said. The tighter the grip, the more cracks appear. Inside the tower, chaos brewed. Jenna forwarded me a photo, 2 security guys hauling stacks of laptops into IT. Every employee dragged into compliance interviews. Fear hung heavier than the fluorescent lights. By noon, Ethan called from a burner phone. His voice shook. I'm done, Emily. If they trace anything back. They won't, I cut in. You've given me enough. Stay quiet. Go invisible. But Collins keeps asking about me, he whispered. He had my badge flagged this morning. I think they're testing me. Daniel mouthed, cut him loose, but I shook my head. Ethan, listen. If you panic, you're finished. Let me carry the heat. Stay in your chair, act normal, and say nothing. Understand? A long pause. Then a whisper, okay. The line went dead. Daniel frowned. You're gambling with him. I'm gambling with all of us, I said. But right now, he's my mirror inside. I need to see their fear up close. By evening, I got proof of just how deep it ran. A company-wide memo leaked to me. Effective immediately, all employees are restricted from external communications. Unauthorized disclosures will result in termination and legal action. Desperation disguised as policy. Collins and Mercer were choking their own people, thinking they could starve me of intel. But they forgot one thing. Paranoia creates mistakes. And mistakes leave trails. That night, Ethan dropped one last breadcrumb before disappearing offline, a screenshot of Collins' calendar. One entry, marked urgent, private offshore call. 10 p.m. Daniel's eyes lit up. If we can trace that. I closed the laptop. We don't trace it. We let him dig the hole deeper. And when he's at the bottom, then we shine the light. The summons came as a shock even to me, a formal invitation to address the board. No explanation. No agenda. Just a time and a room. Daniel shook his head when I showed him. They've lost control if they're letting you in that chamber. Or, I said, they think they're staging my funeral. The boardroom was bigger than I remembered. Long glass table, 12 leather chairs, skyline glowing behind them. Collins sat dead center, Mercer at his right, Mark 2 seats down looking like a man already drowning. Emily, Collins said, gesturing stiffly to an empty chair. Sit. I didn't. I placed my notebook on the table and stayed standing. You invited me. Talk. Mercer's eyes narrowed. You've interfered with operations, circulated false data, and compromised confidential negotiations. I opened my notebook, flipped to a page, and slid it forward. $12 million Singapore. $3 million Dubai. Override underscore mark. Clean, handwritten, undeniable. Funny thing about false data, I said. It doesn't usually come with your signatures attached. Collins' hand twitched. You don't know what you're talking about. I leaned in. Don't I? Because from where I'm standing, the only people bleeding this company are sitting on your side of the table. Mark tried to speak, but Mercer silenced him with a glare. Collins forced calm. Emily, we can resolve this. Quietly. Walk away and no one outside this room needs to know. I laughed. The sound echoed sharper than I meant. You tried that line already. Remember? Sign here. Walk with dignity. That window's closed. The room went still. I tapped the notebook once. You've got 48 hours before your client demands full reconciliation. When that happens, every transfer, every override, every lie will surface. And when it does, I'll be the only one holding proof you can't bury. Mercer's voice dropped to ice. You're bluffing. I met his eyes. Try me. For the first time, Collins looked unsure. He leaned back, exhaled through his teeth, and didn't answer. I picked up my notebook and walked out, leaving silence behind me. Daniel was waiting outside. How bad? He asked. I smiled. Bad enough that they'll trip over themselves to cover it up. And that's when we strike. 2 days later, Daniel dropped a folder on the cafe table between us. His hands shook just enough to make the papers rattle. This is it, he said. Clause 14. The trigger fired. I flipped through the pages. Dry legal text, lines I'd memorized long ago. One sentence stood out like neon. In the event of termination without cause, all intellectual property reverts to the originating author. I leaned back. And since Mark called it voluntary, not cause. Daniel nodded. It's yours. The entire project. Every line of code, every framework, every patent. 30 million in valuation minimum. Legally, they don't own a thing without your signature. For a moment, I just stared at the clause. I'd written it myself 3 years ago, back when no one thought a junior staffer had the foresight to sneak legal steel into a template. They skimmed. I remembered. And now it was loaded. Daniel leaned in. Emily, you understand what this means? They fired you out of greed, and in doing so, they gifted you their crown jewel. You own the deal. I smiled slowly. No. I own them. He rubbed his temples. They're going to fight. Collins will call it a technicality. Mercer will bury it under motions. They'll stall until you choke on court fees. Let them, I said. Every stall is an admission. Every motion is proof they know they lost. My phone buzzed. A message from Jenna, bored in chaos. Client demanding your name on the contract. Collins furious. Mercer silent. I slid the folder back toward Daniel. Draft the letter. Send it to the client. Make it official. He hesitated. Once we do this, there's no going back. There was no going back the moment Mark slammed that binder, I said. Daniel sighed, but his grin finally broke through. All right then. Let's burn the bridge. When I left the cafe, the city felt different. Not like freedom, like ownership. The glass tower behind me wasn't my prison anymore. It was collateral. They fired me to erase me. Instead, they activated the one clause that made me untouchable. And I hadn't even played my strongest card yet. The letter went out at noon. By 3, the board struck back. A thick envelope arrived at Daniel's office, stamped with the company seal. Inside, a notice of breach of confidentiality and violation of NDA. Daniel skimmed it, lips curling in disgust. They're accusing you of leaking proprietary data. They want an injunction to block you from claiming the project. I flipped through the pages. Legal jargon. Bold threats. Nothing new. They're scared. They're also dangerous, Daniel warned. If a judge buys this, they'll freeze everything. I pulled another folder from my bag and dropped it on the desk. That's why we don't fight the claim. We bury it. He opened the folder. His eyes widened. It was a transcript, time-stamped, word for word of the meeting where Mark had told me to sign voluntary resignation. The same meeting where he threatened my bonuses if I refused. You recorded it, Daniel whispered. Of course I did, I said. Never trust a man with a stapler smile. He scanned the transcript, then laughed. This isn't just defense. This is a sword. It proves they fired you without cause while manipulating paperwork. Which makes the clause ironclad. Exactly, I said. And if they push the NDA claim, we counter with this in open court. One leak, and their entire firing strategy becomes evidence of fraud. Daniel leaned back, shaking his head. Emily, you're turning their own weapons against them. They handed me the bullets, I said. I'm just pulling the trigger. That evening, I sent a single reply to their notice. One line, no attachments. Proceed. I welcome discovery. Within an hour, Jenna texted, bored in panic. Collins yelling. Mercer wants to settle. Mark silent. I smiled at the screen. They wanted to bury me under lawsuits. Instead, they'd just invited me to drag their skeletons into the light. And the best part? The real evidence hadn't even surfaced yet. The board caved faster than I expected. By the end of the week, whispers turned into headlines. Vice President under investigation. Daniel slid a printed article across the table. Mark's photo stared up at me, his stapler smile gone, replaced with the stiff jaw of a man cornered. They suspended him, Daniel said. Effective immediately. I read the statement. Polite corporate phrasing, pending review, leave of absence, mutual agreement. Translation. Mark was done. Inside sources filled the gaps. Jenna texted me. Security just boxed up his office. He looked destroyed. Ethan confirmed. Board voted him out. No debate. Daniel raised his glass. One down. I didn't toast. He was never the endgame. Collins and Mercer still think they can walk away clean. They'll pin everything on him. And sure enough, the official memo made it clear. Mark was positioned as the sole bad actor. The override file, the transfers, the irregularities. All his fault. It almost worked. But they forgot I had Ethan's sheet. Collins and Mercer's initials sat right there, black ink tying them to the theft. I looked at Daniel. We don't let them scapegoat him. You want to save Mark? Daniel asked, surprised. No, I said. I want to destroy everyone who thought firing me would erase the evidence. And that includes the board. The next morning, I leaked the sheet anonymously to the client's legal team. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. Client demanding explanation from entire board. Not just Mark. Panic everywhere. Jenna. Perfect. They thought cutting Mark loose would save them. Instead, it lit the fuse under their own chairs. As for Mark, I imagined him standing outside the building with a cardboard box, the same walk of silence I'd taken. The symmetry almost made me laugh. Almost. Because unlike me, he didn't have a plan. The notification came at 9:14 a.m. A single line on my phone screen. Incoming transfer, $5 million. For a second, I just stared at it. Not disbelief, recognition. This was the board's first white flag. They thought money could buy silence. Daniel called before I could screenshot it. They've started paying out. I sipped my coffee. Which means they've admitted the clause is real. $5 million isn't admission, he said. It's bait. They'll call it a goodwill settlement, then drag you into arbitration to claw it back. Then we don't let them. I opened my laptop. Another email waited, official letterhead, Collins' signature at the bottom. Legal phrasing wrapped around a single message. This payment represents full and final settlement of all claims. Daniel read it out loud, scoffing. Final? They think $5 million erases ownership of a $30 million asset. I typed one line in reply, funds received. Claim not settled. Sent. By noon, the second notification arrived. Incoming transfer, $10 million. Daniel nearly dropped his glass. $15 million in less than 3 hours. Emily, they're bleeding. They're trying to close the wound before it spreads, I said. We pulled up the client's latest statement. Their lawyers had demanded the board provide full accounting within 48 hours, including signatures from all original authors. My name was on every draft. Without me, the contract stalled. They can't move forward without you, Daniel said. So they're paying to buy time. Exactly, I said. And time is the one thing they don't have. At 3:27 p.m., the third hit came. Incoming transfer, $15 million. My balance jumped like a pulse. $30 million in total, exactly the value of the deal. Daniel stared at the screen, stunned. They gave it all up. The entire valuation. Just to keep you quiet. No, I corrected. They didn't give it up. They surrendered. And they don't even realize I haven't signed a single waiver. He leaned back, laughing in disbelief. Emily, you just forced one of the biggest boards in the city to pay you the full price of their own project. I closed the laptop. And tomorrow, I remind them it wasn't about the money. Daniel frowned. Then what was it about? I looked out the window at the tower where it started. The glass gleamed like nothing had happened inside. But I knew better. The board was fractured, bleeding, scrambling to cover tracks while the client demanded answers. It was about proving a point, I said. You don't erase the person who built the foundation and expect the house to stand. That night, Jenna called. Whispered, panicked. They're tearing each other apart. Collins blames Mercer. Mercer blames finance. Everyone knows you're behind it, but no one dares say your name. Good, I said. Keep it that way. After the call, I checked my balance again. $30 million. Real. Tangible. But not final. Because until the board broke completely, this wasn't over. Tomorrow, the real fire would start. The receptionist froze when I stepped into the lobby. Same marble floor, same sterile lighting, same silence after security badges scanned. Only this time, I wasn't carrying a cardboard box. I was carrying ownership. Collins, Mercer, and what was left of the board waited in the executive conference room. Their faces told the story before anyone spoke, sleepless, cornered, brittle. Mark's chair sat empty, a silent warning. Collins tried to open with authority. Emily, you received the settlement. This is over. I placed my folder on the table. 30 million doesn't buy silence. It buys proof of guilt. And I haven't signed anything. Mercer leaned forward, voice sharp. You're playing with fire. That transfer was an act of goodwill. That proves the clause holds. I cut him off. You wired the full valuation of the contract. Which means you admit I own it. Silence. Paper shuffling. Someone cleared their throat. I slid out the client's demand letter. They want signatures from all original authors. Mine is missing. Until I sign, the deal is frozen. You can't deliver. Not a dollar moves. Collins' jaw clenched. You're extorting the company you once worked for. No, I said evenly. I'm claiming what's mine. You tried to erase me. Instead, you handed me control. Mercer's mask cracked. What do you want? I leaned forward. Accountability. Every override, every transfer, every signature you buried. Either you admit it, or I walk this to the regulators and the client directly. And when I do, your names will be printed beside Mark's. A low murmur spread across the table. Collins finally snapped. You think one clause makes you untouchable? We'll drown you in appeals. Years of litigation. I tapped my notebook once. Go ahead. Every filing, every motion, every stall, it only proves you know you've lost. And the client won't wait years. They'll sue this board to pieces before you finish the first motion. Daniel slid a second folder onto the table. Inside, Ethan's sheet, Collins, and Mercer's initials marked clearly. Daniel spoke for the first time. We already have evidence of collusion. Enough to tie this board to every dollar. You don't get to hide behind Mark anymore. The room went cold. Collins sank back in his chair. Mercer stared at the sheet like it was a live wire. I stood, gathering my folder. I'll be back tomorrow with the client's lawyers. They'll want my signature. You'll want counsel. Collins called after me. Emily, if you go through with this, you'll destroy the company. I turned at the door. No. You already destroyed it. I'm just signing the obituary. The glass hallway outside felt brighter than it ever had when I worked here. The tower wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. And tomorrow, the city would know it. The client's lawyers arrived the next morning. Suits sharper than the skyline, voices clipped and impatient. They didn't care about politics, only signatures. My signature. We met in the same glass room where Mark once slammed that red binder. This time, the board sat smaller, broken. Collins' tie hung loose. Mercer avoided eye contact. The power they once carried was gone, bled out in transfers, panic, and silence. The lead attorney placed the contract in front of me. Ms. Ward, the deal can't proceed without you. I signed. Ink flowed smoother than I expected. A single motion that shifted 30 million in ownership and stripped the board of its last illusion of control. Collins tried one last push. Emily, think of the company. I closed the pen. I did. For 3 years. You only thought of yourselves. The lawyers collected the papers, efficient and cold. The deal was now mine. The board wasn't. When the room emptied, I stood alone for a moment. Same glass walls, same skyline, same hum of fluorescent lights. But everything felt different. Not victory, exactly, clarity. Because this entire war taught me one simple truth: power doesn't come from titles or corner offices or signatures on a paycheck. Power comes from knowing the details everyone else is too arrogant to read. I looked at the empty chairs and let the silence sink in. They underestimated me because I was quiet, because I worked in the shadows, because I didn't wear power on my sleeve. That was their fatal mistake. And maybe that's the real question now, not just for me, but for anyone listening. How many times have you been underestimated, and what would you do with that advantage if the moment came? Because I'll tell you this, being invisible is the sharpest weapon you'll ever hold. And as for me, they tried to erase me. Instead, they signed their empire over to my name. Every story lives as long as it is remembered. A like is your mark on the story, and a subscription is your ticket to the next one.